Inspirational speech story form, and she was a shadow on the edge of the prairie, a drifter with a jagged scar that ran from her cheek to her jaw. People stared, children pointed, shopkeepers watched her too closely. No one asked for her name, no one asked for her story, but she had one. Once she had a home, a name whispered with pride, and a future mapped in the stars. But life, cruel and unrelenting, had other plans. A fire of betrayal, not flame, took her family. The scar came later, during a night she never spoke of. It wasn't just skin that tore, it was trust, belief, and the last thread of belonging. She wandered from town to town, not looking for kindness. Just space, a place where silence didn't echo so loudly, where eyes didn't pierce so deeply. In those lonely miles, she learned how to read the land better than books. She spoke to horses better than people. She could break a wild mare or spot a lie from a mile away. She didn't wear pride on her sleeve, she carried it in her spine. The world called her a drifter, but in truth, she was a storm paused in motion, waiting for a reason to stay. She owned something few knew of H, a brand that carried legacy, a ranch, vast and untamed, passed down through bloodline and sorrow. She left it behind because what's a crown to a woman the world calls broken? She didn't need land to define her worth. She needed space to find her soul. And then, someone didn't look away. He didn't know her story. He didn't ask. He didn't flinch at the scar. He saw the way she calmed wild things. He heard the silence she carried and treated it gently. For the first time, her reflection in someone's eyes didn't look like a wound, it looked like a woman. That was the moment she remembered who she was. Not a drifter, not a victim, not a ghost with a broken past. She was the owner of H, a steward of legacy, a woman forged in fire who now chose to build, not to run, not because someone saved her, but because someone saw her. And when you're finally seen, truly seen, the healing begins. To every scarred soul who believes their past defines them, remember her, not because she was loved, but because she chose to love herself again. That's where the true story began. Scars have a language of their own. They speak of pain, of loss, of survival. But more often than not, the world doesn't take the time to listen. Instead, it judges. It draws conclusions from what it sees and forgets that every visible wound has a story, one that often goes far deeper than skin. The first keynote, Trauma and Transformation, reminds us that the journey through pain is not linear and rarely graceful, but within it lies the seed of profound change and strength. She bore a scar on her face, not just a mark left by an old injury, but a constant reminder of everything she had endured. In every town she passed through, eyes would glance, double, take, and sometimes narrow. It wasn't just the harshness of judgment that weighed on her. It was the loneliness that came with being misunderstood. People rarely asked how she got the scar. If they did, it was more out of curiosity than care. But she had lived the moment 100 times over, far more painful in her memory than it was in its physical reality. Trauma, especially when visible, becomes a mirror for society's discomfort. It's easier to dismiss than to engage, easier to turn away than to acknowledge. But what many fail to see is that trauma doesn't just damage, it reshapes, sometimes gently like water over stone, other times violently like a landslide that redefines a landscape in moments. For her, the trauma reshaped everything: her sense of safety, her perception of others, her understanding of love, and her belief in her own worth. Yet, through it all, transformation began, not suddenly, but like the slow birth of dawn over a frozen horizon. Each day she survived, she rebuilt a piece of herself. She learned to walk with her pain, not away from it. The scar stopped being a source of shame and started becoming a symbol, a reminder of what she had survived and what she was still capable of becoming. What's vital to understand is that trauma doesn't just happen and end. It lingers, it echoes, it builds walls, and for someone like her, drifting from place to place, it often felt safer to keep moving than to sit still long enough for the past to catch up. But even in movement, she wasn't running away. She was, in her own way, seeking something, some place, some person, some truth that would make the pain make sense. The transformation wasn't about forgetting what had happened or covering up the scar. It was about changing her relationship with it. When you've been hurt deeply, the world feels like a threat. But healing teaches you that not everything is meant to harm you. Some things, some people, might actually be safe. That's a hard truth to accept when you've learned to survive by expecting the worst. And so, her journey illustrates a deeply human truth, that transformation isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world tried to break you, and reclaiming that self with wisdom and compassion. Her scar did not define her. Her trauma did not own her, but they were a part of her, and she chose to carry them with grace, not shame. We all carry invisible scars. Not all of us have the courage to wear them openly, but those who do remind the rest of us that healing is not a destination. It's a way of living, a daily choice, a quiet victory. And in that choice lies power, the power to transform pain into purpose and suffering into strength. She was once only seen for her scar, but through transformation, she became known for her spirit. That's the essence of this keynote. Trauma may shape us, but it never has to define us. The story you tell yourself about your pain matters more than the pain itself, and when you choose to see yourself as whole, even when the world does not, that is the beginning of your transformation. Resilience is not loud. It does not always show up with clenched fists and shouts of defiance. Sometimes, it's the quiet decision to rise again and again, even when there's no applause, no witness, and no immediate reward. In the second keynote, The Power of Resilience, we dive into the nature of enduring strength, how it forms, how it sustains, and how it ultimately changes the course of a person's life. She had every reason to give up. Life had stolen much from her, her family, her innocence, her sense of security, and nearly her identity. The scar on her face was a constant reminder of a night she never wanted to relive, a night that took more than it left behind. And yet, she rose from it. She didn't rise with dramatic flair or some grand gesture. She simply kept going. Resilience often begins in survival. When the storm hits, when everything around you collapses, the first response is not to thrive, but to endure. For her, those early days after the trauma were not about growth. They were about breathing, getting up, moving forward, eating when she could, sleeping when sleep came. No one saw this as strength, because the world often reserves the word strong for grand triumphs. But real resilience is made up of those tiny, defiant acts, choosing to go on when there's every reason not to. She became resourceful. She learned how to mend fences and ride with purpose. She knew how to read maps and navigate terrain. She didn't rely on others because experience had taught her not to, but that wasn't bitterness. It was pragmatism. Her independence wasn't coldness. It was cultivated strength, a strength formed in solitude, sculpted by necessity. And still, even in all her independence, she was gentle with those in need. That's another mark of true resilience. It doesn't harden into cruelty. It sharpens into clarity. She could spot deceit because she had lived through it. She could see pain behind someone's eyes because she had lived with it in her own. Her pain made her capable, but it also made her compassionate. Resilience doesn't mean you're unaffected. She had bad days. There were times the memories came uninvited, times she looked in the mirror and felt the weight of all she had lost. But strength is not the absence of pain. It's the decision to live fully in spite of it. And she did. With each town she passed, each season she survived, she gathered strength not from what was given, but from what she discovered within herself. What's more, her resilience became her identity long before anyone saw her value. Long before anyone knew about her hidden legacy, the ranch-branded H. She had already proven her worth to herself. She didn't wait for external validation. That's what made her truly powerful. She didn't seek pity. She didn't need rescue. She just wanted to live on her own terms, to find peace in her own way. And yet, like all truly resilient souls, there was still a longing in her, a desire not to be alone forever, a hope that someday someone would see past the scar, past the strength, and just see her. That longing didn't make her weak, it made her human, because resilience doesn't erase your need for connection. It just teaches you to survive without it until it comes. Her story is a testament to what people can become when they refuse to let their wounds become their prison. She didn't just bounce back, she grew roots. She didn't just rebuild, she redefined. And through her resilience, she wrote a new story for herself, one not determined by what had happened to her, but by what she chose to become. Resilience, in the end, is not something rare or heroic. It's a muscle within all of us. Her story simply reminds us that it can be awakened, shaped, and made into a force strong enough to carry us through anything. Not because we are unbreakable, but because we learn to mend over and over stronger each time. We live in a world that often judges books by their cover. People look at what they can see, the way we dress, the way we speak, the visible signs of our experiences, and decide our worth. In the third keynote, Society's Labels vs. Inner Worth, we explore how the world too often defines people based on superficial attributes, forgetting that true value lies deep within. The scar on her face was a label that others immediately attached to her, one that spoke of pain, of tragedy, and of a past filled with hardship. But that label was not who she was. From the moment she entered a new town, she became a figure of curiosity, often whispered about behind closed doors. Her scar was more than just a physical mark. It was a symbol of something people could immediately judge. They didn't know her history. They didn't know the sacrifices she'd made, the battles she had fought, or the quiet strength she carried. They only saw what was on the surface, and in doing so they missed the essence of who she truly was. The world in its haste had decided she was broken, lost, something to pity, but they couldn't see beyond the scar, and they certainly couldn't see the power that still lived within her. Society has a long history of labeling people based on the most visible and often the most superficial traits. We label others by their looks, their gender, their class, their race, and their scars. These labels are powerful, not because they hold any truth, but because once we've assigned them, it's so much easier to treat people according to those assumptions. Labels provide a convenient way to ignore the complexities of human life. They allow us to make quick judgments and avoid engaging with the difficult truths beneath the surface. But those judgments, those labels, are rarely accurate. The woman with the scar was more than her injury, more than the pain etched into her skin. She was a survivor, a woman of wisdom, strength, and quiet dignity. What society failed to understand was that her true worth wasn't written in her scars or her past. It was written in the quiet moments when she chose to keep going. It was found in her resilience, in the way she never gave up despite everything she had lost. Her strength wasn't born from avoiding pain. It was born from learning to move through it, to live alongside it, and to transform it into something meaningful. Her value wasn't something others could see. It was something she had to discover within herself. Too often, we place our worth in the hands of others. We let the world's expectations, judgments, and labels define us. We become so focused on meeting external standards, on seeking approval from others, that we lose sight of the unique qualities that make us who we are. But true worth, the kind that comes from within, cannot be measured by what others see or think. It's something deeper. It's an internal compass, a sense of purpose that guides you even when the world doesn't understand. The woman with the scar had learned this truth. She had learned that her worth didn't depend on how others saw her, but on how she saw herself. It didn't matter if the townspeople whispered or avoided her. She knew the strength it took to survive what she had survived. She knew the battles she had fought and won in silence. Those victories, those quiet triumphs, had value. They had meaning, and they were hers to claim. The lesson here is that people often see the surface and make assumptions that never reflect the depth of a person's true character. It's easy to judge based on what we can observe, on physical appearances or visible differences. But true worth, the kind that transcends labels, is never visible to the eye. It's revealed through actions, through choices, through perseverance. The woman with the scar was not defined by her past or the judgments of others. She was defined by how she chose to live in the present, by how she embraced her scars, and by how she found strength in the face of adversity. Her story serves as a reminder that no one should be reduced to a single trait or experience. We are all more than the sum of our parts, more than the labels placed upon us. And the greatest journey we can embark on is the journey of learning to see ourselves through our own eyes, to find value in who we are and not in what the world expects us to be. True worth isn't something that others can assign to us. It's something we must claim for ourselves, just as she did, by rising above the labels and learning to see the depth of our own existence. There is an inherent power in quiet ownership, the ability to hold something significant without needing to shout about it. In the fourth keynote, Hidden Strength and Quiet Ownership, we explore how possessing something valuable, whether it's a legacy, a skill, or a personal truth, does not always require external validation or public recognition. True ownership often exists in the spaces we occupy when no one is looking, in the silent strength that keeps us grounded even when others do not understand what we carry. She had something most people didn't know. Hidden beneath the layers of her existence, behind the scar and the outward appearance of a drifter, was a legacy, a ranch, a piece of land that was more than just property. It was history. It was a symbol of her family's past, a beacon of all they had fought for. It had been passed down through generations, and it was hers now, even though she had left it behind. She didn't talk about it. She didn't flaunt it. It wasn't something she carried as a banner to be seen by the world. She didn't need to prove her worth to anyone, nor did she feel the need to claim her inheritance with words or titles. She carried it quietly, like an unspoken truth. There's power in this kind of ownership. It's not the loud, attention-grabbing kind. It's the kind that doesn't need to be paraded around to gain value. Her possession of the ranch, the legacy of H, was not about wealth or status. It was about a connection to something greater than herself. It was about remembering where she came from, even if the world didn't understand or appreciate it. It was the weight of history in her bones, a knowledge that no one could take away. In a society that often values outward appearance and public achievements, quiet ownership can seem invisible. We are trained to seek validation, to boast about accomplishments, to share our successes for others to see. But there is a quiet dignity in not needing to be seen, in recognizing that true power doesn't require applause. The woman with the scar had found this kind of peace. She knew who she was, even if no one else did. She didn't need to claim the ranch to anyone. She didn't need to wear it as a badge of honor. She understood that her connection to the land was more profound than any words could convey. This concept of hidden strength also extends beyond physical possessions. It's about the strength we carry within, the resilience we've built through our own challenges. It's the ability to endure pain without announcing it, to carry burdens without letting them define us. For the woman with the scar, the legacy she carried wasn't just about land. It was about her family's survival, the sacrifices they made, and the battles they fought. She had inherited more than just land. She had inherited their fortitude, their unyielding belief that no matter what happened, they would persevere. This inner strength, this quiet ownership of her heritage, gave her a sense of purpose that no external validation could provide. Ownership doesn't always look the same for everyone. For some, it's about material wealth. For others, it's about personal accomplishments. And for many, it's about intangible things. Memories, lessons learned, emotional scars healed. The woman with the scar may have left behind her physical inheritance, but she never left behind the essence of what it meant to own something meaningful. She understood that ownership was not just about possession. It was about responsibility, about carrying something with honor, whether or not anyone ever recognized it. She had learned to quietly stand tall with the weight of her past, without needing to explain or prove anything to anyone. This hidden strength is something many of us can relate to. We all carry things in silence. It may be a personal challenge, a family legacy, or a history of overcoming adversity. These things are not always visible, and they are not always shared with the world. But they are ours. They shape who we are and how we move through the world. And often, the most powerful individuals are those who know how to quietly own what they carry without seeking approval or recognition. The woman's journey was not about outwardly showcasing her inheritance. It was about understanding its value to her personally. Her strength came not from what others saw, but from what she knew and held deep inside. She had chosen to live in a way that honored the quiet ownership of her legacy without needing to make it a spectacle. And in doing so, she demonstrated the most profound kind of strength, the kind that comes from within and doesn't require external validation to be real. This lesson in hidden strength and quiet ownership is a reminder that we all have things we hold dear, whether it's a belief, a skill, a memory, or a piece of our past. These things are ours, and they define us in ways that cannot be measured by the judgments or expectations of others. True strength is often found not in the things we display for the world to see, but in the things we quietly carry with pride and in how we choose to let them shape our lives. There is a profound and transformative power in love that goes beyond the surface, a power that can heal wounds and bridge gaps between fractured hearts. The fifth keynote, the healing power of unexpected love, sheds light on how love, especially love that comes without conditions or expectations, can often be the catalyst for deep healing, even for those who believe themselves beyond repair. The woman with the scar was no stranger to pain, yet she had lived a life of solitude, carrying her trauma in silence, thinking that no one would ever truly see her or love her as she was. When you have experienced deep loss and unspoken grief, love becomes something you don't seek out willingly. You don't expect it, and often you don't feel worthy of it. After all, how could anyone love someone who bears such an outward mark of hurt? How could anyone see past the scars to the woman within? For her, love had always been a concept wrapped in pain and loss. The people she had loved had either betrayed her or been taken from her, and she had come to believe that love was something that caused more harm than good. It was easier to be alone, to keep her distance, to protect herself from further heartbreak. But love, as it often does, came in a form she never expected. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It wasn't grandiose or the kind of love one reads about in books. It was simple. It was quiet. It was the kind of love that looked past the scar on her face and saw the person beneath. It was the kind of love that didn't demand explanations or ask for perfection. It was a love that simply accepted her for who she was, scars and all. The man who showed her this love didn't come into her life with any preconceived notions or expectations. He didn't see her as a broken woman in need of saving. He didn't see her as a victim of her past. He saw her as she was, complex, strong, and beautiful in her own way. It wasn't her appearance that caught his attention. It was her quiet strength, the way she carried herself despite the weight of her past. He didn't need to know the details of her history. He just knew that she deserved love, the kind that didn't try to change her, but rather embraced her completely. This kind of love is rare. It doesn't come with conditions or demands. It doesn't seek to fix or change someone. It doesn't try to erase the scars or the painful memories. Instead, it simply acknowledges them and says, "I see you. I accept you as you are, and I love you anyway." And in that acceptance, in that unconditional love, the woman began to heal, not because her past disappeared, but because someone saw her worth without needing to change her. She began to realize that love could be a force of healing, not destruction. For the first time in her life, she began to trust someone with her heart again. She began to let go of the walls she had built around herself. The healing didn't happen overnight, and it wasn't easy, but it was real. It was the kind of healing that allowed her to look at her scar without shame, to remember her past without pain, and to find peace in who she had become. Love, in its most pure and unexpected form, had opened a door to self-acceptance she had never believed possible. This lesson of healing through love is crucial for everyone, especially for those who have experienced trauma and heartbreak. We often think that love must come with grand gestures or dramatic moments, but the most transformative love is often the quiet, patient kind. It's the love that sees us when we can't see ourselves, that holds us when we feel broken, and that whispers that we are enough just as we are. It's the kind of love that heals because it doesn't demand us to be anything other than what we are in the moment. Healing through love isn't about erasing the past. It's about learning to coexist with it, accepting it, and moving forward with the strength that love provides. The woman with the scar learned that love doesn't always come with fanfare or fireworks. Sometimes, it's just a simple, steady presence in your life that makes you feel seen and valued. And that kind of love, the quiet, unwavering kind, has the power to heal the deepest wounds and help rebuild what trauma tried to tear down. Love, when it is given freely and unconditionally, can do more than mend hearts. It can transform lives. It can help us find strength in vulnerability, courage in weakness, and peace in the midst of chaos. And for the woman with the scar, it was this kind of love, expected, patient, and accepting, that began the true process of her healing. It wasn't the love of someone who wanted to change her. It was the love of someone who wanted to understand her. And that was all she needed to begin to heal. There is something inherently powerful about the idea of redemption, a journey from brokenness to wholeness, a transformation that requires both effort and grace. In the sixth keynote, The Journey of Self, Discovery and Redemption, we explore how the path to healing and growth often begins with the courage to face oneself, to confront the past, and to embrace the possibility of change. Redemption is not a one-time event. It's a continuous process that unfolds in moments of reflection, action, and acceptance. For the woman with the scar, the journey toward redemption didn't begin with any grand declaration. It started with small, quiet moments where she chose to confront the parts of herself that she had hidden away. She had spent years running from her past, from the trauma that had shaped her, and from the person she had become as a result. But as time passed, she realized that running wasn't healing. It was just a way of avoiding what needed to be faced. She needed to learn to sit with her past, to understand it, and to come to terms with what had happened to her. Only then could she begin to move forward. Self-discovery often comes with discomfort. We all have parts of ourselves that we would rather keep hidden. The mistakes we've made, the things we regret, the parts of our past that we can't change. But it's through the process of uncovering these layers that we find true healing. The woman with the scar didn't start her journey by seeking forgiveness from others or trying to make amends. She started by forgiving herself. She had to let go of the guilt and shame that had held her captive for so long. Only when she accepted that she had done the best she could with the tools she had at the time could she begin to understand the possibility of redemption. Redemption is about reclaiming control over your own narrative. It's about realizing that you are not defined by your mistakes, your scars, or your past. You have the power to rewrite your story. For the woman with the scar, her redemption came from the understanding that the pain she had experienced did not have to dictate the rest of her life. She could choose to move forward, not by erasing her past, but by integrating it into who she was becoming. She understood that healing was not about forgetting. It was about accepting and learning from what had happened. Along the journey of redemption, there is often a deep confrontation with fear. Fear of judgment, fear of not being enough, and fear of reliving painful memories. The woman with the scar faced her fears, not by avoiding them, but by allowing herself to feel them, process them, and then release them. This was one of the most difficult parts of her journey. Fear had ruled her for so long, dictating her choices and actions. But through self-reflection and love, she learned that fear only held power over her if she allowed it to. She found the courage to move beyond it, to embrace vulnerability, and to trust in her own ability to heal. Redemption also requires patience with the process, with others, and most importantly, with oneself. There are no shortcuts in healing. It takes time, effort, and a willingness to face discomfort. The woman with the scar understood that healing was not linear. Some days would be better than others. Some days she would feel empowered and strong, and other days the weight of her past would feel heavy. But she learned to be patient with herself, to give herself grace during the difficult moments, and to celebrate the small victories along the way. Every step, no matter how small, was a step toward redemption. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of the journey toward redemption is the discovery of inner strength and the realization that we are capable of more than we thought. The woman with the scar did not come to redemption because she was perfect or without flaw. She came to it because she was willing to embrace her imperfections, to recognize that her flaws did not make her unworthy. Through her journey, she discovered a resilience she never knew she had, a strength that came not from her ability to avoid pain, but from her willingness to face it and learn from it. The journey of self-discovery and redemption is not easy. It requires facing uncomfortable truths, letting go of old wounds, and embracing the possibility of change. But in the end, it is a journey worth taking. For the woman with the scar, redemption was not a destination. It was a way of living. It was about choosing, every day, to be kinder to herself, to embrace her imperfections, and to move forward with grace. Through this journey, she learned that redemption is not something that happens to you. It is something you create through your actions, your choices, and your willingness to evolve. And in the end, that is the true beauty of redemption. It is the realization that we are all capable of healing, of growth, and of becoming the best versions of ourselves, no matter where we start. In the final keynote, The Power of Embracing the Journey, we reflect on the importance of understanding that life itself is not about reaching a final destination, but about embracing the path we take to get there. Often, we are so focused on outcomes that we forget to appreciate the moments that shape us along the way. For the woman with the scar, the journey was as important, if not more so, than the destination she thought she was seeking. The twists and turns of her life, the challenges she faced, and the quiet resilience she developed along the way, became the very fabric of her existence. We all tend to focus on where we want to go or what we want to achieve, but life is a continuous unfolding, a series of steps that lead us to greater understanding of who we are and who we can become. We often set goals and think of life in terms of milestones, believing that once we reach them, we will have achieved happiness, success, or peace. But life doesn't work that way. Happiness is not a final stop, but a series of moments where we learn to be at peace with who we are, regardless of external circumstances. For the woman with the scar, learning to embrace her journey meant understanding that healing didn't come from achieving a particular goal. It came from accepting herself along the way. The key to embracing the journey is understanding that it is never linear. There are highs and lows, victories and defeats, and moments of both joy and sorrow. At times, it can feel as though progress is slow or non-existent, but those moments are as much a part of the journey as the times when everything falls into place. She learned that healing and growth didn't happen in a straight line, but in cycles of progress and regression. There were days when she felt like she had moved mountains and others when she couldn't even climb a small hill. But in both situations, she was learning, she was growing, she was evolving. The key was to keep moving forward, no matter how slow or painful the pace. Another important aspect of embracing the journey is recognizing that it is often the challenges that shape us the most. It's easy to think that healing comes from avoiding pain or escaping difficult situations, but true transformation occurs when we confront those challenges head on. The woman with the scar discovered that it wasn't the absence of difficulty that brought her peace, but her ability to navigate through it with grace and strength. She found that by facing her fears, doubts, and pain, she could transform them into sources of power and wisdom. She no longer saw her past as something to escape from, but as something that had shaped her into who she was becoming. The very things she once thought of as weaknesses, her scars, her fears, her vulnerabilities, became her sources of strength. Part of embracing the journey is also about learning to trust the process. We often want instant results, but healing, growth, and change take time. The woman with the scar learned that it was important to trust in the unfolding of life, to let go of the need for control, and to surrender to the process of becoming. There were moments when she felt lost, when she questioned whether she was on the right path, but over time, she realized that the process itself was just as important as the outcome. She had to learn to be patient with herself, to trust that she was exactly where she needed to be, even when it didn't feel like it. Embracing the journey also means recognizing the value in each step, no matter how small. The woman with the scar learned to appreciate the small victories, the days when she made progress, even if it wasn't immediately visible to others. She came to understand that change doesn't always have to be dramatic to be significant. Sometimes, healing is simply about getting through another day, choosing hope over despair, or finding peace in the midst of chaos. Every small step was a part of her transformation, and over time, those small steps added up to something remarkable. One of the most powerful aspects of embracing the journey is realizing that we are never truly alone. The woman with the scar began her journey in solitude, believing that she was beyond help, beyond redemption, and beyond love. But as she opened herself up to the people around her, she discovered that she was part of a larger tapestry of humanity, all of whom were also navigating their own journeys. The cowboy who loved her without knowing her past, the people who accepted her scars, and the experiences she shared with others became part of her healing. The more she embraced the journey, the more she realized that every person she encountered, every experience she had, was helping her to grow. She was not isolated, she was connected to the world in a way she hadn't fully understood before. Ultimately, embracing the journey is about accepting that we are constantly evolving. The woman with the scar didn't just heal, she transformed. Her journey wasn't about returning to who she once was, but about becoming someone new, someone stronger, someone who had learned to embrace all parts of herself, scars and all. The journey was never meant to be easy or comfortable. It was meant to challenge her, to stretch her, and to help her become the person she was always meant to be. And in the end, she learned that the power was not in the destination, but in the act of embracing the journey itself.